senior surgeon said that for all the trouble it was to speak up, you may as well stay silent about unacceptable behaviour. Think about that for a moment. It is easier to put up with bullying, discrimination, sexual harassment, and in this particular case, frank sexual assault, than it is to bother speaking up. Now notice that this happened in March 2015. The College of Surgeons, by September of that year, had carried out the largest workforce survey of all the surgeons, trainees, and international medical graduates. And the results about unacceptable behaviours, as you can see, were unacceptable. 49% of our fellows, trainees, and international medical graduates had experienced one or multiple of bullying, discrimination, and sexual harassment. The rates for just bullying without the other behaviours was very high amongst trainees and international medical graduates. And it was a top-down phenomenon. It mainly happened from senior surgeons and consultants. Now, since then, other medical colleges have run similar surveys, and in fact, people outside medicine, such as law societies, have run similar surveys, and they've all come up with very similar results. So what that tells us is this is actually a universal problem. It's a problem when you have hierarchical structures in complex and demanding work environments, and that this culture has been established for decades, perhaps even centuries. And so how are we going to shift this universal, long-standing issue? I'll tell you what the College of Surgeons has done about it in the 4 years since then. We developed an online module. It is delivered to every single surgeon, trainee, and aspiring trainee. So all your trainee applicants have to do this module. It is mandatory. And over 3 years, we are now 99% complete. I'm down to single digits for the number of surgeons in Australia and New Zealand who can say that they honestly do not know what constitutes unacceptable behaviour. On top of that, we've also developed a face-to-face course. As you can see, it's delivered to all the leadership group of the college, and it has a very wide remit. It is also mandatory. Approximately 600 surgeons, which is roughly 1 in every 10 of the surgeons practicing across Australia and New Zealand, will come and do a face-to-face workshop to deal with issues relating to unacceptable behaviours. And that project is now 66% complete. Total costs so far, approximately $5 million. How are we going? Well, here's 2019. So in this city, this beautiful city of Sydney, we still have this problem. And my research shows that it is still a problem in every state and every surgical specialty. And that research, particularly relating to women in surgery, was published in The Lancet in February. Now, it published in The Lancet because we have emerging research that unacceptable behaviours cause poor patient outcomes, they cause poor doctor outcomes, and they have much wider organisational effects than we previously realised. This is, I would put to you, a significant issue for the medical profession today. So why is culture change so hard? Well, the thing about it is we've never baked this cake before. No specialty has ever tried to do whole specialty culture change on such a wide scale. We don't know what ingredients go into it, and we don't know how long to bake it for, and we don't actually know what our final outcome, what it looks like when we're done. So we need your help. So what I want you to do is to take your devices, your phone or your device, and go to www.menti.com, and put in that code. And you should come up with a screen where you can put in for me what stops you from speaking up about these issues. And can we get the slide activated from... Oops, no. Sorry about the technological. Oopsie. Good. I'll give you a few moments to keep tapping in your responses. This word cloud, the size of the words reflects how many responses we get. And every time I've run this, there is one word that appears in the middle in giant font. Fear. Thank you. So this is something that came up in my research, the one that was published in The Lancet. The fear of repercussion is the most frequently mentioned issue, particularly for junior doctors speaking up. You can see some of those quotes there. If I say something, that's the end. I can never go back. I think that's why a lot of people haven't reported issues that they've had, for fear that it ends your options forever. Most people I know won't complain about bullying because there's so much fear about talking about it, particularly on the program or if you're wanting to get back on the program. And they felt it wasn't worth their career to support a bullied colleague to that level. They were prepared to verbally say, yes, it's terrible, it was horrible, the things they did to you, but when it actually came to giving any tangible support, they weren't willing to. What are we going to do about this fear? Now, remember that one-day course that I told you about where our leadership group in the college has to do this mandatory workshop? This is a slide from that workshop. The standard you walk past is the standard you accept. The standard you walk past is the standard you accept, meaning we want you to speak up. We want you to do something about it. Everyone should speak up. I'm sure you've heard these things said, but this is where I get uneasy. Because to ask young doctors to speak up every time they see an example of bad behaviour puts them at risk. It introduces you to potential unexpected harm. And I don't want you to come to harm. So how are we going to address this? So how do I speak up when I'm still junior? Well, I've got 3 C's for you. Congeniality, collegiality and courage. Congeniality is friendly concern, interest and support. Collegiality, companionship and cooperation between colleagues who share responsibility. And courage, the mental or moral strength to venture, persevere and withstand danger, fear or difficulty. These are definitions taken straight off the internet. And they sound very glossy, but when we dig into them, they're problematic in themselves, but I'll try and work through them. Now, congeniality, friendly concern, interest and support. At this point, I recognise that you might be sitting there thinking, I've got huge cognitive dissonance, so I've just been bullied, and you expect me to report this and extend friendly concern, interest and support towards that person. Really? Why should I support someone who's behaved so badly to me? Now, at this point, I'm going to make myself very vulnerable and say I'm going to act out 2 scenarios for you. All right. Both scenarios involve a junior doctor and a boss, but there's 10 years between these scenarios. So in the first scenario, the person who's the junior doctor becomes the boss in the second scenario. And just to avoid the confusion, when I am the consultant, I will be standing on this chair. Whoops. Excuse me. That's not stable. All right. So, what does Mrs. Smith's scan show? Oh, Mrs. Smith's scan. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know Mrs. Smith was having a scan, actually. Mrs. Smith is our sickest patient. What do you mean you don't know what the scan shows? How did you not know that there was a scan ordered? I mean, like, you're supposed to know these patients. Oh, I'm really sorry. I've only just come onto the morning shift and it wasn't handed over to me in the morning that she'd deteriorated in the night. And so, but I'll go and chase the scan right now. Well, you'd better. Patients could die. And you know, you say that you want to be a surgeon. Surgical training is really competitive to get into. You need really good references to get on the scheme. Go and chase that scan. All right, fast forward 10 years. This little person here has got through and got her good references and done her interviews and done her research projects and done her compulsory courses and gotten on the training scheme and moved house about 11 times. I'm not joking, that's autobiographical. moved house 11 times, the last 2 times with young children in tow, and become a consultant. All right? Second scenario. So, what does Mrs. Brown's scan show? Oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't realise Mrs. Brown. Sorry, I didn't know she was having a scan. But Mrs. Brown's our sickest patient. All right. So the point I'm trying to make is that 49% of trainees and fellows and IMGs who have experienced bullying and discrimination and sexual harassment in our survey, that was 30 years ago, that was 10 years ago, that's now. The person who has behaved badly to you has an odds-on chance that they were treated that way as well. And what I have discovered is that people are not actually malicious. They just don't actually know any better. We do things that way because we've always done things that way. And what we need to do is stop intergenerational transmission. You are not going to fix unacceptable behaviours by behaving unacceptably yourself. So when we report behaviours, we have to describe behaviours, not people. You can say things like, people raised their voice to me, people pointed their finger at me, people made unrealistic expectations of me. But to actually label them and say, that person's a dick, that one's a bastard, she's a bitch, that is unfair, and that's intergenerational transmission. Intergenerational transmission is seen also in things like domestic violence, sexual abuse. But I would like you to think that as doctors, we could be better people than that we can stop this transmission. So that's congeniality. Collegiality, companionship and cooperation between colleagues who share responsibility. So keeping in mind what I said about congeniality, how do we go about speaking up? Well, let me bring to you something that we teach again in this one-day workshop for the College of Surgeons. The advocacy inquiry model. The advocacy inquiry model is used in workplace conflict settings and especially in the business world. And it's a 4-step model where you describe the behaviour, state your concern, invite a response or explanation, and conclude. So for instance, you might say, describing the behaviour, you know, I'm curious that my attempt to chase the scan to correct an earlier error would reflect negatively on my term reference. To state your concern, you'd say, I'm concerned that it seems that I'm prejudged, no matter how hard I try. And then you invite the response or explanation, which sometimes actually doesn't require words. By that point, you're like, and then you conclude. Now, my 2 bits of advice on that are keep it short and do not expect an epiphany. No one is going to fall to their knees and say, oh, I'm sorry, that was really unfair of me, I'll put it right. You will generally walk away from these interactions thinking, well, that fell on deaf ears, and now I've put my head out above the parapet and it's going to get shot off, and nothing will change. But even though I have to admit, even I was skeptical whether this would work when I first started using it, you might not see change in the next few days, and you might not see change in the next few weeks, but over the following months, you will actually see that things do sink in. And we have very good evidence from America particularly that people who consistently use this model, up to 81% of people after one feedback session will change their behaviour. So, and that's much higher than you might expect. So do use this model. But that brings me on to my next topic, courage. Mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, and withstand danger, fear, and difficulty. There is this tension between feeling the fear and doing it anyway and your personal safety. And that gets back to my original point about the fear of repercussion. Speak up using the advocacy inquiry model if you can, but only when you feel it is personally safe to do so. Now, I don't have a hard and fast rule for you. I am hoping that as we gradually change the culture and establish hospital reporting systems, that you will feel safer to speak up. But until we do that across the board, then please do consider your personal safety and don't put yourself in the firing line. However, even if you choose not to speak up right now, I want you to make 2 resolutions. I want you to resolve, first of all, to stop intergenerational transmission and to resolve to behave better in your own personal relations with other people. And secondly, to resolve that one day when you are a leader, that you will speak up on behalf of yourself and the team that you lead. So I've given you a few answers, but what I want to leave you with is a question. Culture change. What will you do tomorrow?